howdy there, folks. It is 7:30 p.m. on the 18th of December in 2021. It's almost 2022 at this point, honestly. It's almost there. And we are starting episode 60 of Gas Talks. So, 60 episodes in, we still have an amazing amount of good news. To be honest with you, it's sometimes... Well, howdy there, Rain. How's it going? It sometimes feels like an overwhelming amount of good news, considering how much sometimes people think that, you know, it's all just bad news, but honestly, there... Oh, no, an ad? Yeah, I know, the ads will get ya. They'll get ya. But yeah, for the most part, there is just so much good news out there that we don't have to really worry about it at all. You know, we don't have to really worry about it at all. And, you made it. Good. We are doing just fine right now, and I am happy to continue this for another episode. So today we've got plenty of good news stories, and I will read a couple of them out for you, the names, I mean, before we get into them, and before I talk about my week. Let's find some good ones. So this is possibly the best one this week. Finally, a fusion reaction has generated more energy than absorbed by the fuel, which is a considerable improvement to the previous fusion generation events. Hedgerows are 2,000 times more valuable for ecosystems than we could imagine. Fountain of Youth Pill could be on the horizon after scientists dramatically extend longevity in mice. So those are a couple of them. But let me explain to you what this show is. So, every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. CST, I start streaming and start showing off some great news that happened throughout the week. Get some good vibes out there. And simply by nature of being myself, I am also able to help people get to sleep or relax or just have me on in the background while you do something else. And if you'd like to, you can even get into the chat. But that's what we'll be doing for about 2 hours. So, I welcome all of you back to another wonderful episode. Now, I hope all of you have had a wonderful week so far. It's been a little bit of a crazy one for me. I've gotten into arguments with family, and I have had an injury in the family as well, which luckily everything is alright now, but it's been a bit of a doozy, I have to admit. I haven't been able to get to the animal shelter either. Do I happen to have the pictures from last time? I don't know if no, I did show the pictures from last time, I just remembered. But I think, for the most part, I'm really looking forward to some of the news here, especially that one about the fusion reactor. You're glad everything is okay? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad for it too. And for the most part, we've got a lot of expectation for the news too, because, I mean, with a headline like that, it's kind of hard not to. Let me make sure I have this one ready. It should be fine. So, if you guys want to talk about your weeks, I'm more than happy to listen to them for a little bit. But we're going to get into the good news now, because we got quite a bit of reads, so I have to make sure we get to all of it. So, our first news from December the 12th. After raising $2.8 million to make wishes come true for sick kids. The Night of a Million Lights holiday tour is back. So, the Night of a Million Lights is back. The holiday spectacular that delights thousands of visitors and raises millions to give sick children and their weary families a vacation. Give Kids the World Village has launched their second annual holiday extravaganza, running until January the 2nd. Illuminating the Central Florida skyline, the 52-night open house will once again provide the public with a rare glimpse inside Give Kids the World Village, a 89-acre, whimsical, non-profit resort that provides critically ill children with magical week-long wish vacations at no cost. What began as an inventive pandemic pivot for Give Kids the World has evolved into Central Florida's most beloved new holiday tradition. More than 92,000 guests attended Night of a Million Lights in 2020, named by USA Today the #1 thing to do in Orlando in December. A new dancing lights show, tram tours, and unique behind-the-scenes experiences are guaranteed to make this year's Night of a Million Lights in Kissimmee, Florida, another dazzling success. Last year's event grossed $2.8 million to make wishes come true for children struggling with illness and their families, spokesperson Cindy Elliott told GNN. Tickets, which start at $25 but vary depending on the date and special add-ons, such as dessert parties, enable guests to immerse themselves in an exquisitely decorated fairy tale neighborhood, the place where wish families call home during their stays. Lovely. That is a crazy amount of effort that went into that house. I mean, look at that. They've even got the grass lights. I think grass lights are spectacular, honestly. They're one of my favorite lights that people can put there. Reminds me of that time we had that. Rissy, hello. Welcome on in. Guests can explore a sparkling tree trail, take photos at one-of-a-kind step-in frames and backdrops, and enjoy a guided storytelling tour of 100 magnificently lit villas from the comfort of a tram, all of which are included in the price of the ticket. The display features 1.25 million linear feet of lights, including 3.2 million lights that were donated by Walt Disney World. Oh, it's alright, Playful. I'm glad that you got into chat, though. Thanks for being here. The event will run from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. daily, with entry times staggered to prevent crowding. Guests will be required to follow all safety protocols and posted instructions established by Give Kids the World Village, in accordance with the guidelines of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This one's slightly longer than I thought it would be. Children with critical illnesses face countless appointments, treatments, and hospital stays, and they are often told no due to the limitations of their illness. We feel privileged to wish children and their families a week of yes, where they can forget their worries. Oh, Ella! Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you can make it. It's great to see you and your name popping up in the chat. Welcome on in. Due to the limitations of their illness, we feel privileged to give these children and their families a week of yes. And you came in before the best story, too. Dang girl, it's been so long. It has been a while, hasn't it? Said Give Kids, the world president and CEO Pamela Landworth, who opened the facility this year following the shutdown. Raising funds will enable us to continue creating the happiness that inspires hope for these precious families. Since 1986, Give Kids the World Village has welcomed nearly 177,000 families from all 50 states in more than 76 countries. Look at this thing, though. My gosh. The amount of effort that would have gone into making this crazy-looking town is staggering to me. I mean, look at that. They even have, like, there's so many lights on this mushroom that it actually is the same pattern as the mushroom. You can't even barely tell those are lights because there's so many of them. It, like, makes your vision go kind of glassy because of it. Taking nearly 2 months to set up and run by volunteers, contributing more than 30,000 volunteer hours, this year's Night of a Million Lights enhancements will include a 360-degree dancing light show encompassing 21 fully programmed buildings set to music, with 6 3-minute holiday vignettes playing each hour that feature testimonials by JKTW Wish Children and their artwork. Of course, there will also be an opportunity for children to meet Santa in his elaborately decorated Florida home. I feel like Santa, he doesn't seem like a Florida guy to me. Also new this year, guests can choose to add on exclusive balcony experiences, providing a stunning setting for marriage proposals, vow renewals, birthday, and anniversary celebrations. All proceeds from Night of a Million Lights will support Give Kids the World, rated 4 stars by Charity Navigator 15 years in a row. When wish-granting organizations receive a request from a critically ill child who wants to visit Central Florida or Disney World, Give Kids the World fulfills the wish, providing every child and his or her family with an all-inclusive dream vacation that includes transportation, accommodations in one of the village's 166 storybook villas, all meals and snacks, donated theme park tickets, nightly entertainment, daily gifts, and priceless experiences at the village, featuring accessible rides and attractions. Discounts are available for groups of 25 guests or more. To learn more and purchase tickets before they run out, you can visit their site. That's the first story down. So, here's our next one. And before we start that, I've thought about what I would want as like a bucket list or as my wish, right? Honestly, I'm not the kind of person who wishes for very much. Like, I don't want an extravagant amount of money or, like, I don't know, super nice clothes. I mean, having nice clothes is a luxury of being successful in, like, avenues of your life that can afford you those things, but I don't think that having, like, a year to live is one of those things that I would count on to get, like, super nice clothes or something. And, I don't know, like a better computer, maybe? But that's kind of like a small ancillary thing compared to what those people are doing and working on. For the most part, though, I think if I knew I had a year to live, I wouldn't change that much. Besides going to see all of my friends and giving everybody a hug and giving them a memory or a photo of me. And plus the show, Cast Talks, would probably be really close to episode 100, and having 100 episodes to sort of be there to let people know that I still exist is also it's a touching and wistful and sort of sad thought, but it is also a good reminder that, you know, even when people aren't with us anymore, they still have an impact on us. And the same can be said about those children. They have a huge impact on their parents and on the world with their positivity and hope, despite the odds that they're faced with. And a lot of critically ill children recover just from the hope and excitement and glee and happiness they get from those kinds of places. I can't give you an estimate or a number, but I'm sure that it has a huge impact on them, at least being able to feel like this amazement and wonder. Because there have been times when I've been sick and I've just been like, I don't want to do anything, and then something amazing happens and I'm like, okay, I'm back on board, let's do it. I'm sure that effect is at play there. So here's the next one. Scientists excited by odd fish sounds recorded in a restored coral reef. The coolest thing you'll hear all week. I think we'll see about that. Few things are better than unnatural mystery, and the rich diversity of chirps, croaks, and chit-chat captured in a recent recording at a newly restored coral reef has delighted marine biologists with its audible mystery. The recordings, made 3 years after a massive rebuilding of coral reef on a 10-acre plot in Indonesia, revealed an oceanic equivalent of an urban hum. It proved not only that the reef had recovered, but that soundscapes of fish here are far richer than ever expected. The coral reef had been devastated by dynamite fishing. By the way, that's one of the most dangerous ways to fish, is to dynamite fish. That's almost as dangerous as a as doing that thing where they all make like an audio thing that forces the fish into one area at a time to kill all of them at once. When you dynamite fish, you actually like destroy a huge amount of not only like land underwater, but also it basically traumatizes anything in the water for like up to a mile or something. It's really not good for anything. Off of the Spermond archipelago in central Indonesia is where the dynamite fishing was happening. But after bending steel rebar into hexagonal shapes called reef stars, the Mars Coral Reef Restoration Project produced the growth of millions of tiny animals called polyps. The reef stars stabilized loose rubble and kick-started rapid coral growth. However, researchers were unsure of whether this welcoming fresh start would revive an entire reef ecosystem, which I understand because, I mean, it's kind of like trying to imagine a human body just accepting a new organ. It's like, it's there, but we don't know if it would be able to actually see it as that, and if the effect of our body using it would be the same. The video below, recorded as the months passed, clearly shows how installing 20,000 of these supportive reef stars and planting over 300,000 corals brought the entire area back to life in just 3 years. Despite the clear visual wealth of corals now present on the reef, scientists knew that much of reef life is difficult to see, remaining out of sight with adept camouflage. But a new study led by researchers from the University of Exeter and the University of Bristol used special microphones called hydrophones instead of cameras to measure just how diverse the restored reefs had become, and discovered diverse sounds, many of which have never been recorded before. Looks like we have a video going for us. Oh yeah, look at that. Gosh, that's a huge reef. Just imagine that, going on for miles. That's the way it should be. Some of the sounds we recorded are really bizarre and new to us as scientists, said Professor Steve Simpson of Bristol. It's amazing to be able to hear the ecosystem come back to life. This study provides exciting evidence that restoration really works for the other reef creatures too, said lead author Dr. Tim Lemon from Exeter. By listening to the reefs, we've documented the return of a diverse range of animals. Mokiodo Prasetya and the Mars Coral Reef Restoration Project have been restoring and monitoring these reefs here in Indonesia for many years. Now it is amazing to see more and more evidence that our work is helping the reefs come back to life, he said. The sounds have been described variously as laughs, purrs, growls, croaks, raspberries, whoops, and foghorns. But exactly which fish making these calls remains a mystery. The foghorn one really blew our minds, Lamont told The Guardian. I got really enthusiastic about trying to work out exactly what fish was making it, so I downloaded the noise onto an MP3 player, and I was swimming around blasting it out, trying to get a call and response back. I thought I got it replying a few times, but I never saw the fish itself swim out to meet the call. So the mystery continues. So guys, we're gonna watch this awesome video about the reef. Look at this. Look at that huge change. My gosh. So yeah, basically, when the reef has the starting polyps and the actual coral there, the rest of it kind of just starts going on its own, right? Because basically, there's nothing else that you need to do. It's got everything it needs. Look at that. Wow. Look at all these people so hard at work. But yeah, they place these here, and eventually the coral regrows over it. And then the year after that, the fish come to check out the coral, and they spread it more and more, And on the third year, it's so widespread and so growing that basically everything there wants to be there more and more and more. And that is a habitat that is perpetuating itself into its natural state again. And it looks pretty natural to me. You can't really tell, for the most part, that there were a huge amount of added placements there to try and actually make the coral reef regrow. Because, I mean, the coral's just on everything, so once it's covered, we won't even be able to see it after a while at all. It is so lovely, though, to actually be like, hey, you know, the world is changing. It is changing, and we are going to reap the benefits of it. And it's exciting. It really is. So, on to the next one. My favorite and most interesting one I've seen so far. Finally, a fusion reaction has generated more energy than absorbed by the fuel. This is from the 12 as well. Researchers at a lab owned by the US government have passed a crucial milestone on their way to their ultimate goal of achieving self-sustaining nuclear fusion. On August the 8th of 2021, an experiment at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory made a significant step toward ignition, achieving a yield of more than 1.3 megajoules. My gosh. 1.21 gigawatts. Researchers said this advancement puts them at the threshold of fusion ignition, which is defined as a sustainable and never-ending powerful energy source. Oh my gosh, here we go, boys. Here we go. The experiment was enabled by focusing laser light, the size of 3 football fields, onto a target which is the size of a BB that produces a hot spot the diameter of a human hair, generating more than 10 quadrillion watts of fusion power for 100 trillionths of a second. Holy moly, 10 quadrillion watts? That's a lot of power. These extraordinary results advance the science, said Jill Ruby. Experiments in pursuit of fusion ignition are important for providing data in an experimental regime that is extremely difficult and is also extremely important as a gateway to enable access to high fusion yields in the future. While a full scientific interpretation of these results will occur through the peer-reviewed journal conference process, initial analysis shows an 8 times improvement over experiments conducted in spring of 2021 and a 25 times improvement over NIF 2018 record yield. It also marked the first time the output exceeded the energy absorbed by the fuel used to trigger it, according to Science Alert. This result is a testament to the innovation, ingenuity, commitment, and grit of this team and the many researchers in this field over the decades who have steadfastly pursued this goal, said LLNL Director Kim Boodle. For me, it demonstrates one of the most important roles of the national labs, our relentless commitment to tackling the biggest and most important scientific grand challenges, and finding solutions where others might be dissuaded by the obstacles. The experiment built on several advances gained from insights developed over the last several years by the LLNL's National Ignition Facility team, including new diagnostics, target fabrication improvements in the hull rim, capsule shell, and fill tube, improved laser precision, and design changes to increase the energy coupled to the implosion and the compression of the implosion. Gaining experimental access to thermonuclear burn in the laboratory is the culmination of decades of scientific and technological work, stretching across nearly 50 years, said Los Alamos National Laboratory Director Thomas Mason. This enables experiments that will check theory and simulation in the high energy density regime more rigorously than ever before, and will enable fundamental achievements in applied science and engineering. Looking ahead, access to this new experimental model will inspire new avenues for research and provide the opportunity to create further benchmarks. Plans for repeat experiments are well underway, although it will take several months for them to be executed. Alright, well, I mean, of course, you know, the golden ticket, the golden goose, the cat's pajamas. What we're looking for is something that whenever you turn it on, it is producing even like 1% of the energy that is like spare from everything that you got in. 1% of the energy you got in added on top that you get out. If we could just have that running perpetually and filling batteries, filling whatever, constantly until it goes to 2%, then 3%, then 4%. Basically, that's all you would ever need. And the next problem from there would be the logistics of actually getting that power everywhere it needs to go. So my guess is it would be like a transformer or a series of, I mean, they could even just do like a single, like long frickin' wire that goes from one place to another. And then like from that place, the wire stretches out and goes to other places. That would be pretty expensive, but as well, it's basically like if you have unlimited energy, imagine the amount we could save on needing to do like coal or anything. We would have a surplus that would be so astronomical that basically we would be like, I mean, we would still, you know, have windmills and stuff like, or sorry, wind turbines and stuff like that for when we need to have energy in a small place. But if you just have as much energy as you need and you don't need to worry about it, the next step would be wireless energy. If we could manage that, then basically everything everywhere would always be active constantly and would never go out. Assuming that a solar flare doesn't happen. Also, there's that new 5G energy that I've heard about, which if we can like somehow link 5G energy to fusion energy, then basically if you have a phone anywhere, then you have power and your phone would charge itself just by being on. And that's the future, I'll tell you that much. That's next year. So here we go, folks. Elderly couple living in UK's darkest village lights up the sky with huge Christmas tree they planted in 1978. How long is this one? Not that long, okay. This tremendous pine is becoming known as the little tree that could. Planted by an elderly couple long ago when it was shorter than them. It's grown to more than 50 feet and provides a majestic light to a town with little illumination on any horizon. Avril and Christopher Rollins bought the fir, costing £6 at a garden center shortly after moving into their home, using it as their first Christmas tree. They planted the 6-foot tree in the garden and took a photograph to commemorate the occasion. The tree took root and thrived. And today it towers 43 years later over the village of Inkborough, Warks. The village, with its 17th century pub that inspired the bull in Radio 4's The Archers, is one of the darkest places in the UK, as one of the only towns without any streetlights. Huh. Doesn't sound so bad though. But last week, its 2,000 residents turned out to see the switching on ceremony, which lit up the huge tree that can be seen from miles around. The switching on of the lights has become quite a village tradition, said Avril. A lot of people in the village say that it's the start of their Christmas. This year was quite special because last year the Rollins had to do the switch on by themselves. We had fireworks this year, plus a friend who brought down a trailer that had Christmas music on. The tree has grown so big that a cherry picker is needed to help the couple decorate it, with 3,000 lights ahead of the big unveiling. I mean, from what I know, alpines can get pretty big. I think it'll get a little bigger than that, maybe like 10 feet longer or 10 feet taller, maybe more. I'm not sure how much taller we'll get, but it's getting there already. Oh, look at those two. What a cute couple. It's been wonderful to see so many people enjoying the lights this year, said the 75-year-old retired TV writer. And since the tree is getting more and more attention, they decided to ask people to donate to a cancer research charity online in memory of a close friend who passed this year. The couple say they are still stunned by the size of the tree, which grows more than a foot each year. We had no idea just how big it would grow. It's absolutely huge now and towers over our house. It probably adds a ton to your resale value, though, I'll tell you that much. Avril swooned. We even get cards addressed to the tree, which is quite sweet. So if you get a tree so big and so popular that people write it Christmas cards and send it like their thank yous, what I would do is I would have like a box or something built into like the crook of the tree where all the branches come out from, and I would just put the notes and the Christmas cards in there, and I would be like, there you go, tree, they're all yours. You own them now. They're your Christmas cards. Because honestly, like, what can you do about that? If it's the tree's cards, then the tree should get them. That's what I think. I'm being sentimental though, don't mind me. So, hedgerows are 2,000 times more valuable for ecosystems than we could imagine. This is from the 13th. Let's see how long this one is. Not too long. The humble hedgerow is a staple sight in any countryscape in Europe and parts of North America. A British mainstay, some scientists suspect they act as ecosystem anchors that can play host to more than 2,000 different species of plants and animals in a single year. Indeed, one journal published an English ecologist report on an old hedgerow near his house that throughout the years contained 2,070 species, from badgers to many hundreds of insects. Hedgerows define our countryside and provide many environmental services, but are also vitally important for wildlife as a refuge, a source of food, and as corridors along which they can move through the landscape. Write the National Hedge Laying Society, the only charity dedicated to maintaining the traditional skills of hedge laying and encouraging the use of hedgerows for wildlife and landscape. There are 435,000 miles of hedgerows in Britain. My gosh, someone actually measured that. Stretching and winding farther than the entire British road network. Sometimes built to keep people out, other times to keep animals in. There are 30 recognized traditional styles of hedgerows, some of which date back an astonishing 800 years. That's a lot. That's quite a while. While appearing like a manicured wood wall or a tangled mess, the species richness of hedgerows in Belgium was actually found to be higher than in the nation's forests, 30% higher. This can partly be explained by hedgerows being a microcosm of the forest ecosystem. A high-reaching canopy shades and keeps moist an understory that attracts a variety of fungi and animals. This, in turn, stimulates competition and diversity among plants battling for light, pollinators, and other resources. This diverse ecosystem attracts pollinators to spring and summer blossoms, which can lead to bees making it their home and increasing adjacent crop yields. The sheltered habitat attracts insect-devouring birds, which in California was found to save $4,000 a year in insecticide costs for a 1,000-foot hedgerow. They also attract insects like wasps and hornets, which eat aphids and other unwelcome diners in a vegetable garden. Hedgerows are essentially highways of countryscapes. Badgers, hazel dormice, and hedgehogs use them as cover to move around stealthily. In agricultural areas, one study found that hedgerows are the single best way to connect fragmented stretches of forest or unmanaged fields, and as such can be critical for keeping populations of animals healthy. Nocturnal animals like moths and bats use hedgerows as flight paths to safely navigate built-up rural areas. 2/3 of observed moths were sitting on a traveling parallel to a hedgerow during their movements at night. Like all plants, the growth that makes up a hedgerow stores carbon, and the British government suspects that since hedgerows can live so long, they could be a good way to absorb greenhouse gas emissions rather than simply planting trees. But that's not the only protective effect they have. Hedgerows act as a strong defense against soil erosion by preventing rains or winds from dispersing the soil in a paddock out into streams or streets. One study even found they can help reduce the spread of disease between livestock. It's pretty good. All of these reasons have given many countries a reason to act on increasing their hedgerow coverage. In January, French President Emmanuel Macron committed €50 million to planting 4,300 miles of hedgerows. In Britain, a non-profit action group representing the government's official conservation watchdog has a petition going to expand Britain's hedgerow network by 40%, approximately 120,000 miles, based on recommendations from the country's Climate Change Committee. Most of the ways humans artificially engineer the land tends to be seen as negative, but back in the dawn of the modern period, the obsessive habit of farmers separating their paddocks from the neighbors created an almost magical feature of the environment that all living things congregate in. Lovely. I didn't know hedgerows were so helpful and important. I don't think I felt like negatively about them, but I didn't understand that they could do so much. So this news to me. I think hedgerows are. I mean, hedge mazes count, don't they? They're not quite the same, but hedge mazes probably help with the carbon footprint a little bit too, which means more hedge mazes, which means more hidden things in hedge mazes, which I adore. So it's an all-around good thing, if you ask me. So here's the next one. The world's vast networks of underground fungi to be mapped for the first time to protect trillions of miles. This is an Andy Corbley story. 10,000 fungal samples will be taken from hotspots around the globe and cataloged as part of a project to map out the vast bulk of the most valuable fungal biomass of the planet, consisting of trillions of miles of filaments that transmit nutrients, water, and information throughout Earth's soils and the plant life therein. Fungi is as vital to the world ecosystem as the plants they sustain. SPUN, or the Society for the Protection of Underground Networks, is aiming to expand our understanding of mycorrhizal networks to put them more in focus of climate science and modern environmental policy. As fungus collect nutrients, particularly carbon, they build networks of very tiny filaments called mycelium that make up their vast presence on our planet. The more recognizable mushrooms that mark their comings and goings are a tiny percentage of the organism's total size. Research from biologists, mycologists, and forestry experts has shown that these filaments form vast networks that, when seen under a microscope, look just like information or electricity moving through cabling, and when viewed together, look as active as the neuronal networks in our brain. The networks interconnect trees and other plants, exchanging information about parasites, nutrient dearth or density in the environment, and even facilitate trading whereby a fungus which cannot make its own sugars will take some from a tree in exchange for a metal like phosphorus. That's bizarre. Comprising of scientists from Canada, Holland, the UK, the US, France, and Germany, SPUN aims to make mycorrhizal samples from 10,000 hotspots of fungal diversity, from which they hope to get a better understanding of where the largest threats are to that biodiversity. Ecologies with thriving mycorrhizal networks have been shown to store 8 times as much carbon as depleted ones. This is really important stuff we're talking about this week. An understanding of underground fungal networks is essential to our efforts to protect the soil on which life depends before it is too late, said renowned conservationist Jane Goodall. So far, 10 hotspots have been identified, with the first samples to take place in Patagonia 18 months from now. Other sites include the tundra in Canada, high altitudes in South America, the Negev and Sahara deserts in Israel and Morocco, the Mexican highlands, the Russia taiga forest, the steppes of Kazakhstan, and the lowlands of Tibet, which should make for an excellent road trip. Just below our feet lies an invaluable ally in mitigating climate change: vast, hidden fungal networks, said Jeremy Grantham, a billionaire backer of Spun. Billions of tons of carbon dioxide flow annually from plants to fungal networks. Yet these carbon sinks are poorly understood. In working to map and harness this threatened but vital resource for life on Earth, Spun is pioneering a new chapter in global conservation. Oh, lovely, look at that. I like that image. So, when it comes to having like a really good way to try and make the environment do better, right? To try and make the environment succeed more, for sure, what we have to do is mostly involving other people getting things together and being more receptive to these changes and to the spending required for them. But more than just that, more than just the spending, we need the brain power to do it. Because a year ago, we didn't know about the connection of hedgerows or the connection of bees to certain flowers blooming early, or the connection of mycelium to making a network of almost communicating plants, it seems. So imagine if you had the bowling alley farming with the hedgerows, with the pollinators, and with the mycelium. Basically, what this is all adding up to slowly is a plant powerhouse in which you have this mastery of agriculture, where when things are placed properly and placed well, you no longer need to burn land after you use it. Basically, with enough things in place, the land is given the exact amount of nutrition it needs to make everything you need it to. And because of that, it is a completely almost self-acting process. You know, birds come and eat the bugs, bees come and give it the pollen, mushrooms give it the nutrients it's lacking, and the hedgerows, they produce enough extra creatures and animals that are staying away or staying in to provide the rest of the support needed. So if we could master that kind of technological power in making the growth of plants, the growth of corn or maize, or the growth of any kind of really important plant on our planet, I mean, that's another huge step towards controlling the amount of food we can make. And if we have enough food, then we can worry less about making enough for everybody, which already isn't a problem, but still we have a scarcity enough that we have to worry about making enough, which inevitably makes us make too much, and then not everybody gets to eat it. So if we can not worry about making enough and instead worry about getting it to everybody, which is being changed, essentially it would be like no one would actually be worried about any of it. They'd just be like, yeah, okay, we can basically say exactly how much is going to be pulled out from the crops this year. And if they continued that trend, I imagine that it would only venerate the crop more and more, making it grow back faster and maybe even better each time, considering the ground and the earth can learn to make things better in certain areas, like natural groves or volcanic soil. That is, of course, limited because, you know, the ground can only be so used to growing the same thing in so many ways. But it is true for trees as well. When you cut a tree down, it regrows slightly faster the next time. Well, assuming you only get it down to a stump. But there are trees that have been stumped so much that they actually grow back pretty fast. Maybe 75% as much time as the other trees that have been felled. And, of course, this does take a while still. It still takes years. But if that science could still productively be added upon, and there isn't a max that it can lead to, right? Assuming that there isn't, then 10 years from now, we could have a series of crops that are so well trained, basically, to grow back as needed, that we have these constant, perennials that are growing back and then being used, and then growing back and being used. And, I mean, from there, you could go in any direction you wanted to. That would basically be a win. Especially if you could somehow mix that with hydroponics. If you could somehow make that into a hydroponics thing, we would have enough food that everybody on the Earth could eat something, assuming, like I said, we had the logistics to cover the entire planet, which drones might make that easier. And who knows where it'll go from here, but I'm looking forward to seeing. Anyway, enough about that. We're looking at some monkeys. The only monkeys that soak in hot springs to lower their stress. Japan's bathing monkey mystery. He does look like he could use a little bit of a bath with hair like that. This is from Andy Corbley from the 13th. Humans love spas, sauna, bathing, hot baths. After a cold day, what could be better? Japan has a famous trope of wild monkeys that also love a relaxing soak in the country's hot springs. And after delighting tourists for decades, scientists have finally decided to sort out the behavioral patterns particular to this fascinating trait. What they found was that monkeys not only use the hot springs for warmth in their frigid winter environments, but that they serve to bring down the levels of stress hormones in the monkeys' brains. Near the site of the last Winter Olympics lies the town of Nagano. Here, Japanese macaques, I don't think that's the right word, but exhibit a strange behavior. Bathing monkeys is a more common sight in India and China, but only in Nagano have monkeys been recorded bathing in hot water. Other macaques live further north than Nagano, so it's clear the species is adapted to cold weather. However, despite the fact that the local environment is filled with natural hot springs, the 140 degrees Celsius or degree Fahrenheit water temperature is too hot. Nearby hotels use cool water to bring that scalding temperature down to one that gets, more enjoyable. And in 1963, a female monkey was found relaxing in one such pool. Imagine the first person to see that. They're like, what the heck is a monkey doing in my pool? Eventually it caught on, and the monkeys became a nuisance and a health hazard, so a park was built nearby where the monkeys had exclusive access to several 104 degree Fahrenheit pools. Having obviously use of their therapy for the cold, recent tests have aimed to determine whether there was any other drive of this novel behavior. Perhaps unsurprisingly, considering primates' strong social bonds, a stress hormone called glucocorticoids, which is known to be elevated by cold weather, were considerably lower in the animal's fecal matter after periods of bathing. Raffaele S.C. Takashita from the University of Kyoto admitted that spending so much time watching the macaques relax in the hot springs rubbed off on her. I confess that during my research, many times after I jumped into one of the hot springs pools, adding that it was a human-only pool, of course. So this is interesting. They look so comfy, don't they? Oh, they're precious. They're so precious. Look at them just hanging around, enjoying the water. Oh my gosh, they're such cuties. Oh man, it's tough being a monkey. I guess it makes sense. They would just sit there and hang out. I mean, monkeys like to be warm and to be in a spring like anybody else. And look at that. I mean, why wouldn't they, right? Macaques probably have just stumbled on something amazing, and then they're like, hey, everybody, check out these pools. And suddenly everybody and their mom is showing up, and yeah, look at that. The macaques are just like, well, I'm not going anywhere, so you can leave, or whatever, but I'm not leaving because it's warm in here. I mean, animals discovering that water being warm is very helpful to them is certainly something that I imagine has happened before. It is quite novel, though, seeing that monkeys are so... I think they seem to really... they dig it. Who can blame them, though, right? Who can blame them? It gets so cold up there, they must be really stressed sometimes. If we had hot baths for every animal in the world, maybe there'd be less animal violence towards each other. I don't know. But glucoco... Wait, I want to look at that word again. I want to memorize that word so I can... Glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids. Okay, I'm going to remember that word from the future. Glucocorticoids. Wait, I didn't remember that well enough, though. I want to remember it another time. Glucocorticoids, right? Glucocorticoids. There we go. Glucocorticoid. Got it. But yeah, their glucocorticoids are super active, and they're like, oh man, I just gotta take a bath, I'll be fine. They do take a bath, and like anybody who has ever taken a bath and enjoyed it, you feel better afterwards. You're just like, oh man, I needed that. It's kind of nice seeing them in there, though. It makes me feel more human seeing that other animals do it too. And it's very human of them to do that. They look very peaceful. Aww. Oh man. Some money monkeys. I guess they might be chimpanzees, but you know. Aww. It must be very relaxing for them. You know, it must be incredibly relaxing for them to not have to worry about sustaining their own body temperature for a little while. It relaxes me, certainly. Yeah, this one's really quick, so we'll just do this one. The Brits reveal their best-loved holiday traditions, like Christmas jumpers on Boxing Day. This is by Good News Network from the 13th. It has been revealed that British people and their best-loved Christmas traditions include watching festive films, wearing Christmas jumpers, and tucking into their turkey sandwiches on Boxing Day. A survey of 2,000 adults found Christmas dinner to be the top tradition over the festive period, while listening to Christmas songs and putting a mince pie out for Santa on Christmas Eve also featured in the top 20. The poll also found 53% believe the impact of the recent events has made them value Christmas traditions more than they realized. But going to a pantomime, shopping in store, and going out for drinks on Christmas Eve were among the loved traditions that Brits now feel uncomfortable doing following recent events. The survey further revealed that 41% believe the traditions they follow have changed over the years, with 35% having adopted their traditions in a bid to be less materialistic, while 32% have altered the traditions for their children. Francesca Savage, head of Christmas at Save the Children, which commissioned the poll to celebrate its 10th Christmas Jumper Day this Friday, December the 10th, said, "For many of us, the traditions we take part in at Christmas are what make the festival period something we look forward to." However, COVID-19 has meant that we've had to adapt, and in doing so, people have swapped materialistic traditions for ones that bring joy to their children. The poll, commissioned via OnePoll, found that 1 in 5 have bought a second-hand Christmas sweater before, while 1 in 8, 13%, have made their own. The survey also found almost 7 in 10 agreed people should make more of an effort to be more sustainable this Christmas, such as not using glitter, wrapping paper, or buying plastic toys. And surprisingly, this year, over half, 53%, plan to buy second-hand gifts in a bid to be more sustainable than ever before. However, almost 3/4, 73%, agreed that there was still a stigma about buying second-hand presents, while 3/5 admitted that if they did buy a second-hand present, they would conceal this from the recipient in fear of their reaction. British high street retail expert and founder of Mary's Living and Giving for Save the Children shops, Mary Portis, said with 42 million euros worth of unwanted Christmas presents sent to the landfill each year, there's no better time for the nation to opt for a thoughtful, less consumerist Christmas by buying pre-loved gifts. Charity shopping offers saving and the chance to buy personalized presents for loved ones, but most importantly, it gives back to those who need vital support. Whether you buy sustainably for this year's 10th Christmas Jumper Day or want to find a hidden gem to gift, please remember that by buying secondhand from a Save the Children shop, you can help protect the magic for children everywhere. The money raised goes towards helping disadvantaged children get food, healthcare, and education they need. Well, lovely. I have a desire to celebrate Christmas more seriously this year, but I'm not quite sure what I will do for it. I find that I can be really uncertain about the things I'd like to give as far as gifts or the people I'd like to give them to. It's not so much an issue of giving gifts, though, I suppose. It's more an issue of being able to celebrate properly. And a proper celebration, I guess, means different things to every person. But for me, being able to see my friends and being able to actually give them something they would like and to make them feel as treasured and as helpful and as loved as I actually feel about them would be lovely. So, let's move on. Amazing video of the giant phantom jellyfish from deep in the dark fathoms at 3,200 feet. That's a phantom jellyfish. It's very strange looking, almost a bit phallic, I'd say. Researchers in California recently captured footage of one of the most striking sea creatures you'll ever see, the Stygiomedusa gigantea, aka the giant phantom jellyfish. Seen only 9 times by the researchers over the span of thousands of dive trips to the lightless depths of the ocean, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute unmanned submersible encountered what scientists described as a billowing crimson curtain and a ghostly giant. Never has a creature been so accurately depicted, and rarely has there been a name so befitting its owner as the giant phantom jelly, with a 3-foot-long head or bell and 4 30-foot-long tentacles, could substitute a stage curtain in an abstract photo, and no one could tell the difference. The first specimen ever collected was in 1899, and it's been seen about 100 times since. As rare and special as the giant phantom jelly is, it's widely distributed, capable of living in all these oceans, bar the Arctic, and at all depths, though it's typically found between 3,200 and 12,000 feet, in a zone known as the bathypelagic, where light can't reach, and the underwater pressure is immense. Scientists know very little about this amazing animal, but they assume it feeds on plankton or small shrimps. During this particular dive, the MBARI's submersible, called Doc Ricketts, spotted a small fish called a protula hover above the bell of its host and swim in and out of the jelly's voluminous arms. It's very strange looking, isn't it? The wide open waters of the Midnight Zone offer little shelter, so many creatures find refuge in the gelatinous animals that are abundant in the environment, the researchers write. Previously, deep sea specimens could only be studied via trawl net, which has its uses for sturdier creatures like the colossal squid, one of the method's most famous entanglements, but jellies turn to an undefinable mush in a net. High definition and now 4K video of the giant phantom jelly captures stunning details about the animal's appearance and behaviors that scientists would not have been able to see with a trawl-caught specimen. Someone had the bright idea to put ominous piano music over the footage. I'm not going to play it with ominous music, but I will play it for you, because it is very strange looking. Isn't that a bizarre thing? It looks like it's fake, right? Like it's from a movie. It's very, very strange. I almost don't want to look at it anymore because it's kind of creepy. I'll show it for just a few more seconds, though. It's hard to believe that something like this exists for whatever its reasons are for existing. It's just so strange. Anyway, it's pretty creepy, so I'm not going to look at it anymore. No, I'm not interested in this one. Here we go, here's a good one. How long is it? Not very long at all, good. 65 cats are treated like favorite guests at the world-renowned Hermitage Museum in Russia by Andy Corpley from December the 14th of 2021. Like the building itself, the cats which roam freely around the basement of the Hermitage in St. Petersburg have endured through changing fortunes. Originally brought into the missive Baroque building by Empress Elizabeth I to catch mice. The 65 felines have outlived and even replaced the SARS, which adopted them. Treated like royalty down in the cat's quarter, they enjoy 24-hour veterinary care, feeding, and freedom from the adoring public thanks to their own press secretary. Catherine the Great reportedly called them the guardians of the galleries. I was thinking about Marvel for a second, though they aren't allowed into the galleries of what was once the Winter Palace, and what has become the largest museum in the world, and most people don't know they exist. However, it's not rare for a visitor outside the building to come across a feline lounging in the sun. After the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, many in St. Petersburg could no longer afford to feed and care for their cats, and so the Hermitage, which had been open to the public for more than 100 years, decided to adopt some of the strays to add to the descendants of the original cats brought from the city of Kazan 100 years before that. Now, as then, the Hermitage will take in stray cats that find their way into the museum's underbelly, perhaps by befriending one of their furry staff members. These are given a new life and kept fed and healthy, mostly through the staff and visitor contributions. If mice would pass close to our cats, they will catch them, Maria Haltunen, the official spokeswoman for the cats, told CNN. They do their job very well, Haltunen told ABC News. That most of the time the cats need not do anything, as their smell serves to keep most mice away, which is very true. Once you get a cat in an area for long enough, mice just don't go there anymore because they're like, oh no, the cat's in that area. We're not gonna try it, because they don't want to lose any of their brood trying to get something when there's a cat potentially lurking around. And cats are very good at hunting. That's why there's so many cats in like Europe and in medieval times, because cats are so good at getting rid of mice. Many of the cat's ancestors have been immortalized for their service to the state in paintings on the very walls of the museum they defended. It's all part of the rich tapestry of history, the building with its art, architecture, history, and its feline guardians has woven through some of the most devastating and destabilizing events in human history. So I'm worried that if we watch this, it's going to show slides from some bad times in history, but it's only 2 minutes, so we'll see. There's a cat. Oh, they look so precious. If it does that, I'll turn it off. Oh my gosh. Cats are so agile, they can just fit everywhere. Back to the cats. Oh, this makes me want to go to the animal shelter again. Gosh. If I could be as nimble and as agile as a cat, I don't know. I don't think I would need much else. Like, they're just so agile. They're so nimble, right? Like, you see a cat walking around, they can just climb buildings to the very top, and like, you'll never even know how they got there. You're like, I didn't know there was a way up here that wasn't like the entrance. But there is. There's totally an entrance somewhere that you don't know about. Aww. Such cuties. But yeah, it's good that there's a place for those cats to call home, because they need it. How long is this one? It's not too long. So here's another one from the 14th by Ayla Ross. Or is it Isla? I don't know. Extraordinary Roman mosaic in Villa discovered beneath British farmer's field. Archaeologists have unearthed the first Roman mosaics of its kind in the UK. The initial discovery of the mosaic was made during the 2020 lockdown by Jim Irving, son of landowner Brian Naylor, who contacted the local council archaeological team. Let me take a little sip of my tea. That is some strong wild berry tea. My gosh. It's good though. The initial discovery of the mosaic was made during the 2020 lockdown by Jim Irving, son of landowner Brian Naylor, who contacted the local council archaeological team. The remains of the mosaic measure 11 meters by almost 7 meters, 36 by 23 feet, and depict part of the story of the Greek hero Achilles to form the floor of what's thought to be a large dining or entertaining area. Mosaics were used in a large variety of private and public buildings across the Roman Empire, and often featured famous figures from history and mythology. However, the Rutland mosaics is unique in the UK in that it features Achilles and his battle with Hector at the conclusion of the Trojan War, and is one of only a handful of examples from across Europe. The room is part of a large villa building occupied in the late Roman period between the 3rd and 4th century AD. The villa is also surrounded by a range of other buildings and features revealed by a geophysical survey and archaeological evaluation, including what appear to be aisled barns, circular structures, and a possible bathhouse, all within a series of boundary ditches. The complex is likely to have been occupied by a wealthy individual with a knowledge of classical literature. Fire damage and breaks in the mosaic suggest that the site was later reused and repurposed. Other evidence uncovered includes the discovery of human remains within the rubble covering the mosaic. These burials are thought to have been interred after the building was no longer occupied, and while their precise age is currently unknown, they are later than the mosaic, but placed in relationship to the villa building, suggesting a very late Roman or early medieval date for the repurposing of this structure. Their discovery gives an insight into how the site may have been used during this relatively poorly understood early post-Roman period of history. Evidence recovered from the site will be analyzed by ULAS at their University of Leicester base, and by specialists from the historic England and across the UK, including David Neal, the foremost expert on mosaic research in the country. The villa complex was found within an arable field where the shallow archaeological remains had been disturbed by plowing and other activities. Duncan Wilson, chief executive of Historic England, said, "To have uncovered such a rare mosaic of this size, as well as a surrounding villa, is remarkable. Discoveries like this are so important in helping us piece together our shared history. By protecting this site, we are able to continue learning from it, and look forward to what future excavations may teach us about the people who lived there over 1,500 years ago." Jim Irvine, who first spotted signs of something fascinating beneath the surface of the earth on a ramble last year, he said, "This archaeological discovery has filled most of my spare time over the last year. Between my normal job and this, it's kept me very busy and has been a fascinating journey. The last year has been a total thrill to have been involved with and to work with the archaeologists and students at the site. I can only imagine that what will be unearthed next." So here's the video for that. It's only 3 minutes, that's just fine. I just want to see what the mosaic looks like. Oh my gosh. So can you imagine that you're just like farming or doing whatever you're doing, and like you just happen to unearth like a Roman, like a painting or a mosaic, and you're like, what is that? And you just keep going, and there's more and more of it. It's like a bathhouse almost, and you're like, oh, this is a building. I mean, who do you even call? I would call the police first of all and be like, hey guys, I found this, can you help me? And then they'd be like, yeah, okay, we're gonna have to call someone else about this. And then they would call in a scientific magazine. And maybe you could just send pictures to a scientific magazine instead of calling the police, but you know, certainly call somebody, right? Because this is pretty historic, if you ask me. I actually don't know much about the Roman period. I bet my brother would know quite a bit, though. For the most part, though, mosaics are pretty crazy. I mean, people put a lot of effort into them, despite it being like a really, really artistically complex thing to do. People built them all over the place. To be fair though, back in Roman times, you didn't have a lot to do. So making art was certainly something a lot of people took time to do. Which I certainly respect, right? Because they had to spend their time doing something. If you weren't working, you were an artist. Monarch butterflies employ a sun compass on their long-distance migration. This is from the 15th, just a few days ago. Monarch butterflies are famous for their annual long-distance migration, which takes them over several thousand kilometers from the north of the USA to their overwintering habitat in central Mexico. On their migration, the conspicuously orange, black, white-colored butterflies use sun information as main orientation reference. But how is sun information processed in the butterfly's brain? Previous studies have already described cells that process the solar azimuth. However, we don't know these cells encode the sun during flight. We didn't know these cells encode the sun during flight, says Jerome Beetz from the Biocenter at Julius Maximilians Universität Würzburg, JMU, in Bavaria, Germany. Until now, it was assumed that the sun compass always works, irrespective of whether the insects sit, walk, or fly. A team led by JMU researchers Jerome Beetz and Basil El-Youndi shows that this is not the case, and that the compass is established at the onset of flight. Surprisingly, the nerve cells change their coding strategy during flight, so that the neural network represents the heading direction of the butterflies relative to the sun in a similar way to a compass. This only happens when the animals can control their own direction of flight. How was this gap in knowledge closed? The team, led by Beetz and El-Youndi, measured for the first time the neural activity in actively flying monarch butterflies and examined the influence of the animal's orientation behavior on the processing of sun information. Such measurements had previously only been carried out in restrained butterflies. The JMU researchers took advantage of a technical trick. We tethered the butterflies to a freely rotatable rod in the center of a flight simulator, which enables the butterflies to actively choose a flight direction. The sun was mimicked with a green light spot. While the tethered butterfly was flying, we monitored the brain activity with ultrafine microelectrodes. The experiments, published in the scientific journal Current Biology, prove active movement of the butterflies is necessary to process sun information as compass information in the butterfly brain during migration. Our results emphasize the importance of performing neuronal recordings in actively moving animals in order to understand how the brain solves complex orientation tasks, says Beetz, who is first author of the publication in Current Biology. Other researchers from the Biocenter, as well as from the universities of Lund, Sweden, Bielefeld, and Texas, were involved in the project. The work was funded by the German Research Foundation, DFG. Beetz admires his research subjects. Our publication uniquely demonstrates that even a brain with the size of a grain of rice is a highly complex organ that enables insects to perform such amazing behaviors. With their brain, monarch butterflies manage the enormous migration by using an efficient internal compass. Such a long-distance migration without using modern navigation devices is hard to imagine for us humans, and this is one major reason that drives my fascination for these enigmatic butterflies. Next, Jerome Beetz and Basil El-Youndi plan to investigate how the butterfly's sun compass operates when the butterflies have access to the natural sky, than when simply using a light spot to reference for orientation. To do this, the neural recordings must be carried out in open-air flight simulations. Gosh, that's getting pretty crazy. Do I want to read this one? Yeah, this one's pretty quick. I'm going to take another drink, though. So, It's crazy to me that butterflies and ants and bees are so much more intelligent than we think they are. It's crazy to me. It's not that I disbelieve it, but I find it crazy to imagine. I think I'll have some honey after the stream. Near to where the Ottawa and St. Lawrence rivers meet, a small island teeming with birds and turtles. Oh, I didn't even say the title of this one, excuse me. 93-year-old in Quebec donates cherished island after protecting it from city sprawl for 50 years. Near to where the Ottawa and St. Lawrence River meets, a small island teeming with birds and turtles sits surprisingly untouched amid a suburban sprawl that has turned the surrounding waterline into concrete walls. The island, called Île Ronde, or maybe it's Île Ronde, was spared from this development by the dollars of one man back in the 1960s, who after decades of refusing to sell to real estate and property men, has just donated it to the Nature Conservancy Canada to be protected forever. Thor Wickstrom immigrated to Canada from Sweden and built a house for himself, his newish wife, and their first son, Hans. Ah, that's a great name. In a town called Laval on the shores of Riviere des Prairies. Out of their window, the 7-acre Île Ronde, I don't know how you say that, sat offshore by a mighty stone throw. Wilkstrom convinced the previous owner to sell it, and it was there that many childhood memories were made among migratory birds and turtles. Now, at 93 years of age, he's at peace knowing the forests and marshlands, the little cabin and birdhouses he built, will all be protected forever. It's just a good feeling in my heart. I know this will be there forever, he told CBC News. The Wickstrom family has long been involved in the protection of Quebec's natural resources. In addition to donating islands and many contributions to the Nature Conservancy, they support Ducks Unlimited Canada. Nature was more important than some stupid money in my pocket, he added. I said, this is something that's got to be preserved, and I kept my word. He turned down dozens of offers to sell a property over the years. Good news for the northern map turtle, a species the Canadian government designated as a special concern, and one which no longer has access to much of its previous habitat due to development along the river. Île Ronde also hosts a unique tree species called the shagbark hickory, and many migratory bird and game species like widgeon, gadwall, and wood ducks. The Wickstrom family has taken great care of it, and with this very meaningful act, we are protecting nature, protecting the natural diversity of this unique habitat for the benefit of the animal and plant species that live there, but also for future generations, said Anne Furland, project manager for the Montreal Greenbelt at the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Well, lovely. Oh, this is a TED Talk. I don't want to do a TED Talk. I feel kind of... This one might be helpful to me, actually. I want to see how far it goes. Okay, good. This should be good. Genetic research uncovers new hope for people with stuttering conditions. I do stutter a lot. Less on the microphone and less here on this show, but in real life I do stutter sometimes. More than 2.5 million Americans have a chronic condition arising in early childhood that can negatively impact their education, job performance, and employability well into adulthood. There is no cure, and existing treatments are awfully minimally effective. Yet for those with persistent developmental stuttering, there is new hope thanks to groundbreaking research led by scientists at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee, and Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. In 2 papers published this week, Jennifer Piper Bello, PhD, and Shelley Jo Kraft, PhD, describe a genetic architecture for developmental stuttering and report the discovery of new genetic variations associated with the condition. The researchers said that these findings and studies like them have the potential to identify therapeutic directions that could improve outcomes for people who stutter, which I almost did during that sentence. It's clear that in populations, stuttering is polygenic, meaning that there are multiple different genetic factors contributing to and protecting people from risk, said Bello, associate professor of medicine at VUMC. That was something that had not been clearly shown before these studies. The new revelations will have a huge impact on people who stutter and on the parents of children affected by the condition, predicted Kraft, associate professor of communication sciences and disorders and director of the behavioral speech and genetics lab at Wayne State University. It's a piece of themselves that they can then understand, she said, instead of living a lifetime of experiencing these differences in their speech and never knowing why. With the help of colleagues in Ireland, England, Israel, Sweden, Australia, and throughout the United States, Kraft has collected blood and saliva samples for genetic studies from more than 1,800 people who stutter, including more than 250 families with 3 generations of stuttering. Oh gosh, stuttering. Even the word sounds bad to me. But while that effort, called the International Stuttering Project, identified new genetic variations or variants associated with developmental stuttering, it was not sufficiently powered to reveal the complexity of the condition. There simply were not enough people in the studies. That's where Bello comes in. She utilized a key VUMC resource, BioView, one of the world's largest repositories of human DNA, linked to searchable electronic health information. BioView has enabled researchers to conduct GWAS, or genome-wide association studies, to probe the genetic underpinnings of a wide range of disease. Stuttering, however, is a condition that is rarely mentioned or given a diagnostic code in the medical record. People aren't hospitalized for stuttering. We had to come up with some clever new ways to try and capture that missing code, Bello said. From confirmed cases of developmental stuttering, the researchers constructed a constellation of diagnostic codes for other conditions such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and autoimmune reactions to infections that co-occur with stuttering more frequently than would be expected by chance. Then, using machine learning techniques, they created an artificial intelligence tool that used the presence of these phenotypes recorded in the electronic health record to predict those who were likely to stutter, even in the absence of having a direct note about their stuttering in their medical record, Bello said. Supported by $3.5 million 5-year grant awarded in 2018 by the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, part of the National Institute of Health, the researchers demonstrated that their stuttering prediction model positively predicted the presence of stuttering more than 80% of the time. The research, published in the American Journal of Human Genetics, also turned up a stuttering-related gene implicated in autism spectrum disorder, as well as genetic variants that affect the regulation of certain hormones. The latter finding may help explain why boys are more likely to stutter and why women who stutter are more likely to recover. Some correlations between traits may be spurious, Bello noted, but if the researchers establish genetic connections between stuttering and other traits such as ADHD, those findings could open up avenues for treating both conditions at the same time, Kraft said. Yeah, I mean, I stutter more when talking to my family because I have a difficult time actually saying what I would like to. I say and like and so and but a lot more than I would like. But I gotta tell you guys. So I want to skip to this one because I want to make sure we get to this one. Because I'm actually hiding what time it is for myself, so I don't care what time it is, but I'm still thinking about it for the moment. So here's the, this is tying for first place on the most important one we've done today. Fountain of Youth pill could be on horizon after scientists dramatically extended longevity in mice, from Ela Ross on the 16th of December. A fountain of youth pill could be on the horizon, injecting elderly rodents with a grapeseed extract, increasing their remaining time by more than 60%, my lord. It also boosted overall lifespan by 9%, equivalent to more than a decade in a human. Corresponding author Dr. Yu Sun of the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Shanghai said, the plant chemical has high potential as a clinical intervention to delay, alleviate, or prevent illnesses. The flavonoid known as PCC1 flushes out zombie or senescent cells that have stopped dividing. They accumulate naturally as we get older and release chemicals that cause inflammation. Dr. Sun explained, aging-associated functional decline of organs and increased risk for chronic disease is driven in part by their accumulation. Here we show PCC1, a component of grape seed extract, increases the health span and lifespan of mice through its action on senescent cells. The study screened a panel of natural compounds in a model of cultured human prostate cells. It found PCC1 selectively destroyed senescent cells, leaving healthy ones alone. In several mouse models of disease, including exposure to radiation, numbers were slashed and health boosted. The therapy also improved the effect of chemotherapy in those whose immunity had been compromised. What's more, injections of PCC1 were administered to 91 male and female mice aged 24, wow, to 27 months. In human years, it would be in the range of 75 to 90 years old, explained the researchers. The regime appears to have been well tolerated. A safe dose needs to be established before further clinical trials can begin, Dr. Sun said. Considerable progress has been made over recent years to develop specific agents to treat individual age-related conditions, such as type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, fragility, and vascular dysfunction. However, the combined effect of these drugs is controlling morbidity and mortality has been modest. These diseases tend to occur in synchrony as multimorbidities, with prevalence increasing exponentially after 70 years of age. The findings offer hope for prolonging health and lifespan and treating age-related conditions with a therapy derived from natural sources. Dr. Sun added of the study published in Nature Metabolism, the potential anti-aging effects of PCC1 provide good support for further translation and clinical development with the overall aim of achieving a longer and healthier life. Well, I like that one, to be honest with you. That was a good one. I really want to look at what time it is, but I should care less, shouldn't I? But I hope you guys are enjoying the stories today. They've been really good. There's a lot of really good stories. Gosh. Let's see. So we'll do a couple more, and then we'll probably finish out with cute animal videos. If anybody has an animal they'd like to recommend for today, then let me know, and we'll start watching them real soon. Excuse me. A talking crow befriending a school has a foul mouth, but is still beloved by kids in Oregon, by Andy Corbley from the 16th. That's a handsome-looking crow. In one Oregon town, kids at a local school noticed that a particularly nosy and brave crow seemed dead set on getting into the classroom. Sure enough, finding an open window at Allendale Elementary School, the bird made its way into a 5th grade classroom and started helping itself to some snacks, all the while adoring the attention from the kids and being quite friendly. Oh, and it began talking. According to local reporting from the Oregonian, the crow was actually a rescued bird that was all grown up and had lived with a family in the community for years, since it was a baby. None of the students or teachers knew that, however, and its calm demeanor and vocabulary left them stunned. It would say, "What's up?" and "I'm fine," and lots of swear words. The education assistant, Naomi Emil, it was like a parrot. It was the weirdest thing. Then it became quite the production when all the grades came out to see the attempt of animal control to try and remove the jolly jabberer from the classroom, even though one officer fed the bird from his hand. Ultimately, they left the school empty-handed. Emil said they decided it was not in their jurisdiction to catch the crow. Little did the school in Grants Pass realize they were just the latest chapter in the strange talking crow story which had begun weeks earlier. Returning from out of town Thanksgiving this year, resident Janelle Chatuk was devastated to find her bird missing. Cosmo had escaped, and then been captured by a neighbor who evidently didn't like the teasing, which Cosmo had a reputation for doing to those who were uncomfortable around birds, and so whisked the crow away to an animal sanctuary. Not realizing, however, that the bird was something akin to a house pet, the sanctuary released him back into the wild. That's when he found his way to the school to hang out. Chatuk's daughter, Daphne Colprin, admitted that the corvid knows a lot of words, over 40 now. Cosmo also loves children, and frequents a child daycare center near their house. As soon as he found out what time the kids got there, he'd go over there and hang out, Colprin told the Oregonian. Sometimes he does use profanity. Over the years, reports of a talking crow have caused quite the stir around town. At Planet Fitness, where Janelle was working out, he would sit on top of the building, talking to people who were going in. Back at the school, the crow's owners swooped in to relieve Allendale Elementary of their new mascot after learning the news that their bird was spotted. Cosmo loved those school children so much, it took 45 minutes of temptation with sardines to get her into custody once again. I think they made a he right there, but that's okay. Let's see, how many more of these do we gotta do? Let's do the cube one. How long is this one? Not very long, okay. Chinese rover spots weird large cube on the moon. This is from yesterday. A lunar rover has spotted a strange cube-shaped object and will alter its official course to check it out, needing 2 to 3 months to arrive. So, here's a good thing to remember. To us, this image looks pretty close, but to a rover, the reason it looks so high-res and so close is that there is no atmosphere on the moon. And atmosphere and air, collection, mist, humidity, all of those things, they stop us from seeing very far, especially when there's pollution. But on the moon, none of that is there. So literally everything you're seeing is at the exact same resolution and closeness in its look that everything else is, because you can't tell how close anything is, because our brain uses things like that atmosphere for our depth perception, and when we don't have that, we don't actually know the distance very well. So it's kind of a trick of the mind, a trick of the light, and it looks closer than it really is, but it's actually very, very far away, I imagine, because we can see extremely far, basically to the edge of the curve of the moon. And the moon's pretty big, and the rover moves pretty slow, unfortunately. Official observations suggest it could be a rock thrust upward from the impact of an asteroid that clearly landed next to it, or a technological relic from previous human exploration, or hopefully perhaps something that can't be explained, which I don't believe is the case. The infrequency with which we visit outer space, the extreme requirements of such travel, and the inspiration that are required to do so make everything about it more intense. The joys are more joyous, the achievements are more celebrated, the mysteries are more intriguing. The Chinese U-22 lunar rover spotted a bizarre shape in its camera while traversing a C-shaped enclosure made up of ferocious impact craters on the moon's far side. Under the dark and deep sky, a circle of winding mountains stood on the extension line of the sky and the moon. On the side, people can't help but admire the extraordinary craftsmanship of the universe, wrote Our Space, a Chinese language blog affiliated with the National Space Agency. The driver zoomed in on the pictures, slowly admiring them one by one. Suddenly, an obtrusive cube on the northern skyline attracted their attention. This object pierced through the winding of the skyline like a mysterious hut. Right angles are unusual in nature, usually marking out something artificial if we see them through the gloaming of the forest. On the moon, however, there's not a lot of room for possibilities for a cube. After some days, the camera produced an image to share with the world of their mystery hunt. The blog post suggested it could be evidence of previous moon missions, but noted the presence of a small impact crater next to the cube, which could have led to the upthrusting of rocks following the impact. Popular Science magazine said it could simply be a pixelation of the image as it was taken from far away. U-22 landed with Chang'e 4, the first two spacecraft ever to land on the moon's far side. They've virtually had the place to themselves since they arrived in 2019. They spotted the cube at the end of October, which means we should be getting some closer images and more details soon as the solar-powered rover draws nearer. So do you guys think that's an alien? Because I don't think it is, but I'm curious if everyone else is considering the idea. For me, my expectation is that it is a strange piece of rock that has been shaped in a very bizarre way. Sort of like how when you see, you know those stalagmites that appear on the ground in, I believe it is Ireland, on one of those distant derelict islands in Ireland, or around Ireland. They have I think they're called the Giant's Stones. They're like hexagons that come out of the ground and go upwards. I imagine that this is one of those occurrences, because for the most part, these sorts of things do happen, but it is also one of those things where it's not very common that they occur, right? Like normally you don't see giant rocks sticking out of the ground anywhere, but equally you also don't see squares in nature very much either. I need to ask, you guys can hear me talking, right? Because you guys haven't been talking very much, and I'm starting to get worried that I'm not making any sound, to be honest with you. So do quell my worries if you don't mind. As far as everything goes, it's probably just a strange looking rock that has formed in a bizarre way, like one in a million thing. You know, you're fine, we hear you, glad to hear it. It's probably a 1 in a million kind of formation, and it can happen maybe in like the strangest of occurrences. Maybe the asteroid impact affected it, but I mean, what are the odds that we just go over there and there's like an alien just sipping beer? Stupid. An alien just, you know, like, oh, I guess there's a rover there, and they wave at us, and like they mess with the rover. That would be really crazy, but I don't expect that. I am expecting there to be just a series of, like, you know, less square-shaped looking rocks than we thought they were, that we just sort of looked at from a distance and they looked more square because of it. It'll probably look way less square when we get closer. So here's a good one. A dog rescued from a ledge 50 feet above a Colorado creek had been missing for weeks. This might be our last story. Actually, no, the biocompatible glue for the eyes is our last story. This is from the 17th, just yesterday. Jesse Lee, a dog that had gone missing for 2 weeks, was recently discovered stranded on a precarious perch in the Pikes Peak region of Colorado. While her owners diligently searched for her every day, they could never have imagined their lost pet would ever wind up in such a scary spot. Animal law enforcement was first alerted to the pooch's presence by a hiker who'd spotted her on a ledge about 50 yards up the cliffside bordering Fountain Creek. 2 officers, Johnson and Barker, who, how perfect is that last name, right, were quickly dispatched to the locale. Using binoculars, the pair pinpointed Jesse Lee's location and launched a daring rescue. Wow, she was up really high, wasn't she? Oh, she's just sitting there waiting. Our law enforcement team went out there to assess the situation and make sure it was even a dog the person was seeing on the cliff, because they were looking from a distance. We wanted to make sure we could come back and get the tools that were necessary to rescue the dog. Cody Kostra told KOAA. After determining it was indeed a doggo at risk, the officers were able to borrow climbing equipment from a local resident to implement the retrieval process. Officer Barker first secured a rope to a sturdy wooden fence post atop the cliff, then rappelled down the side of the ravine, getting as close to Jessie Lee as she dared. While it was clear that Jessie Lee's wagging tail, the poop pup was certainly glad someone had finally come for her, with the ground crumbling beneath her paws as she inched toward Officer Barker's outstretched arms. It was also apparent that there wasn't any solid footing to be had. So she knew she couldn't get out of there easily. Using a catch pole lowered to her by Officer Johnson, Officer Barker was luckily able to secure the pup around her neck and shoulders. This allowed Officer Barker to slowly pull the dog closer without the risk of losing her if she fell. Once the pup was finally in the arms of Officer Barker, Officer Johnson lowered a secondary rope which was tied into a makeshift harness for the dog. Officer Johnson quickly pulled up the dog and Officer Barker shortly after. The mission was declared a resounding success. Jessie Lee was quickly whisked back to HSPPR, where she was easily identified by her microchip and name tag. HSPPR immediately notified her relieved and grateful pet parents who showed up bright and early the next day to take their cherished fur baby home, bringing this episode to a happy conclusion. And our last story for the day. Biocompatible glue for repairing corneas, a sight for sore eyes. From today's news, a biocompatible antimicrobial adhesive for corneal repair and grafting could replace sutures and conventional adhesives that have bad side effects. An assistant professor of bioengineering at the University of California, Riverside, has developed an adhesive that rapidly integrates corneal cells to speed the healing and reduce the chances of secondary infection. The breakthrough by Iman Noshadi also reduces complications that increase the risk, cost, and healing time of eye injuries and corneal transplants. Of the 2.4 million eye injuries annually in the United States, 600,000 are open globe corneal tears, leading to blindness in some cases. There are also around 40,000 corneal grafting procedures performed each year. The current standards of care for corneal repair are sutures and cyanoacrylate glue, both of which are associated with complications and cost during and after the procedure. Sutures used for large tears and grafting can cause astigmatism, vascularization, and infections. Cyanoacrylate glue, which is not FDA approved, can be used only for tiny perforations, has low biocompatibility, cytotoxicity, opacity, and causes infections and cataracts, all needing attention, care, and cost. There is no FDA-approved material platform to replace the present techniques for corneal repair effectively, said Noshadi. Our technology addresses all of these issues, resulting in reduced operative and post-operative costs. The UC Riverside product should solve these secondary problems with its biocompatibility, high adhesion, flexibility, and high strength. It will not accidentally loosen or fall off, and its antimicrobial properties will help prevent infections. Because the adhesive is transparent, it will help restore vision more quickly as well. The new material is a biodegradable polymer that combines a choline-based ionic liquid, an organic salt with high water solubility and electrochemical properties, with polyethylene glycol, a biocompatible compound widely used in medical applications. These adhesives can adhere quickly and strongly to the tissues. Its biocompatible nature allows long-term regeneration of corneal cells. Our gel will result in a safer procedure that will improve the patient's quality of life, with better health outcomes by preventing visual acuity, loss, or blindness. The simpler procedure will save time, reduce operative costs, and eliminate corrective surgery and need for extensive post-operative care, said Noshadi, who, with a $250,000 grant from the National Science Foundation hopes to have the product on the market by 2026. With funding, Noshadi's research group will test the material's tissue adhesion, biocompatibility, flexibility, transparency, and antibacterial properties. Then the researchers will test its performance on corneal tears and study its effect on corneal cells, as well as the migration of corneal cells into the bioadhesive over time. When the UC Riverside corneal adhesive is approved for the market, Noshadi expects that corneal transplants will be more affordable, less dangerous, easier to recover from, and more available to people who need them. Well, folks, that is all of our good news for today. We've done it. We've got it all figured out. Let's see what time it is. It is only 9:16, so we're right on time. So, as for the end of today, you guys, as always, I'm glad to have you here. I have a lot of stuff going on, and, it's getting close to the craziness that exists within the end of the year. And I am so glad that I have this to maintain me and to hold on to. And we are going to have another episode next week on Saturday. On Christmas is the intention. So if anybody's interested in showing up, I should be on for at least an hour. I don't know if it'll be a full hour, but certainly I will be there. So we're planning to do an episode tomorrow with Playful on one of our community nights. And as far as everything else goes, this has been great and fun. I like all this news we're getting, and I'm into it. So I can only hope that you guys are into it too. And that's it, I guess. We've gotten started, we've gotten finished, and now we've gotten all this good stuff out of the way. So, well, I'll tell you guys, thank you so much for coming. It's great to have you. It's good to be back. And we're episode 60. We're over halfway to 100. I don't know if we will reach 100 by next Halloween. I think it'll probably be like we get to like 89 or something, but I don't know for sure. Yeah, if you guys don't end up being in the next one, then have a great Christmas. And as always, stay safe, have a quiet night, and take care. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now, folks. And take it easy.